The Truth Girls.
Hi everyone, it's Sonia here. So I had done several videos where I was talking to you about what we call around here kratom, what the Americans call kratom. And so the video that I want to do today is about why I now quit kratom, after using it daily for 3 years. Yeah, I just quit. Actually, I'm sort of like at the end of what you would call withdrawal. I know what a lot of people really want to know is, can you quit kratom? Is it addictive? And what kind of withdrawal do you have? And I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I started using it and like what happened, you know? Well, okay, look, I'm gonna be super honest with you. I'm not usually this honest and like expose myself to this extent, but I'm gonna expose myself today because I want to help people, you know? So whatever, I think it could help someone. I had an opioid addiction many years ago, like 20 years ago. Yeah, so I got on the methadone program. And I was on it for a long time, like 12 years, because it was really hard to get off it. So then what happened was at the very end, like I was on this really low dose. I was on that low dose for like years. Really low, like 5 milligrams or whatever. But I just couldn't get off it. I mean, it was, every time I tried, it was like I couldn't cope with it. So I was on it for so long, and I have restless leg syndrome, so that made it really hard because obviously the withdrawal makes that a lot worse. So I was like, my God, I'm gonna be on this forever, you know? That's big pharma for you. Leash to the pharmacy. And then I was so tired of it. And then I had this friend who had a drug problem. And he told me that there was this herb that you could use for detox. So I was going to get it for him. Well, I brought it home, and actually he didn't use it. He didn't take it. And I used it. Instead of, what happened? I didn't go to the pharmacy, or I hadn't been to the pharmacy, or I hadn't taken my methadone or whatever. And I just took this instead, kratom. And it was like, wow, it really worked. I didn't have the Jimmy legs. I felt normal. I was like, oh my God, I found the miracle plant. It will free me from the pharmacy. I was really excited. So I never went back to the pharmacy again. I was like, the day I got the kratom, I was like, bye-bye, fuckers. Nice knowing you. Actually, not nice knowing you. I'm so done. Oh my God. And I was like, yes, you know, like now I can leave the country. I don't have to get permission from the government because, oh my God, it's complicated. So I got off the methadone like the day I got the kratom. And I was so glad. And I used it for about a year. Then I got off the kratom. It was like not a problem. I just tapered it. And then I would just like have 1 cup of tea on the counter. And if I felt a little edgy, I'd take a sip. But yeah, it wasn't that hard. You know, I got off it. So then, you know, I still had the kratom around the house, and I still had restless leg syndrome, so I would use it like maybe once or twice a week. Sometimes I would go for months without touching it. It was not a problem. Then I started getting menopause, which I thought I could handle naturally, which now I don't recommend. I mean, I was suffering so much from hormone withdrawal, actually, and I couldn't cope with it anymore. I mean, it was really bad. So I made a decision to start using the kratom. It really gave me relief at the time. I figured it was better than, you know, taking pharmaceuticals. Because let me tell you what they offered me. Lyrica for mood stabilizer, risperidone for meltdowns, Ativan for anxiety, Dexedrine because they thought I had ADD because I was so scattered. They gave me a sleeping pill at 1.2. And Sinemet, which is a dopaminergic drug for restless leg syndrome. And there was another one too. They gave me Adderall once. God, that was awful. Anyway, let's say like 6 or 7. Oh, Effexor too, because they're like, yeah, Effexor is good for menopause. So like 7 toxic pharmaceuticals. I was terrified to take any of them. I wouldn't do it. And I was like, this isn't what I consider a solution. Are you kidding me? You want to load me up with all these chemicals? That's the best you can do? So I just left. I was like, this is screwed. Oh, and then, you know, the artificial hormones too that I didn't want. And I was just like at my wit's end. So I went home and I was like, that's it. I'm gonna start using kratom as much as I want, whenever I want. I don't care anymore. It went up to as much as like 8 times a day, dosing like 2 grams. So I guess it would be like maybe 16 grams a day, 15, 16. Um, Sometimes it was less, sometimes it was more. And it pretty much stabilized. Like I know at the highest point it was like about 16, and then it would go down to maybe 10 if things were more stable. But it was pretty much like between that, you know, for like 3 years. And then what happened was I got on bioidentical hormones and all my menopause stuff got better. And I'm still in the habit of taking this kratom every day. Let's just say, like, the kratom, at the very least, it wasn't doing anymore what I wanted it to do. And I started to feel like maybe I was taking so much of it that it was toxic. I mean, maybe I was just being paranoid, but I started to worry, like, what is this going to do to my liver? Because, I mean, it is a kind of drug after all. And if you go on antidepressants, you're not supposed to stay on them forever. You know, same for anything. So I started to feel like, you know, this is not a long-term solution to whatever my problems are. So I had this friend who had been in 12-step meetings, and you see where this is going. I wanted to connect her with someone else who was in one of these programs because I wanted to make sure she went to her meetings, you know. And when I brought her, and I did this a couple times, and then I went to one alone, and I was like, you know, I need this. Obviously, I was still having a lot of problems, and I just felt like, you know, I believe in God. You guys know that, and I believe that I have a lot of faith, and I try to walk that faith every day, but something isn't right. I'm overwhelmed with anxiety. This was the thing. When I went there, I said, you know, I looked at the steps and I was like, oh my God, I have a problem. I have a problem with anxiety and avoidance. Like, okay, I'm not using hard drugs, but I'm not coping, and it's like, it's getting ridiculous. I can't even cope. So I was like, okay, I felt like God was like, yeah, you know, this is okay. You can do this. I'm okay with it. So I was like, yeah, I want to do this, you know. And actually at first I didn't even really think of the kratom because I was like, well, it's not really a drug, you know. Anyway, so what I did was I decided to quit the kratom. And so I decided to do a quick taper. Some people, they talk about tapering like for 3 weeks. 3 weeks is considered a short taper. Some people like take months, you know. So I decided to just taper it, and I tapered it really fast, like in 1 week. Couple things I would say about that. First of all, you do get withdrawal. I'll tell you what it's like. But number one, it's not like heroin withdrawal. It's not like methadone withdrawal. I mean, I don't know if you were really taking a lot, because when you look on the internet, they're like, oh, it's like opiate withdrawal, this and that. Well, kind of, but when I had opiate withdrawal, I was completely wrecked, really sick. With kratom, I was driving my car, still doing my job, you know. Even with the taper, I mean, it had some similarities, but I honestly didn't have an experience that can compare to like a hardcore opiate withdrawal. That said, there was some withdrawal, which was like, actually, I started to get this really bad headache. Like, I felt like my head was going to explode. And I just started to get pain, like, all over. Like, I'd had this achiness before. Like, when it would wear off, I'd always be like, oh, I have to dose myself because I'd get achy. But the achiness was just inside, like, inside the muscles or the bones. But it wasn't on the skin. This was a big difference. Like, with opiate withdrawal, your skin becomes really hypersensitive. Skin is just so sensitive, and anywhere you sit, you can't get comfortable. Anything you do, you lie down, everything hurts. Even just the position, touching your bed, I mean, it's crazy, you know. And that didn't happen. I just had this achiness like inside, but I didn't have that crazy hypersensitivity, which makes a big difference in terms of how tolerable it is. Also with real like opiate withdrawal, I would get, you know, what you call akathisia, where you're just completely like, you can't stop moving. It's like, oh, it's crazy. You just want to jump out of your skin. And so that did not happen. Actually, my RLS was not really worse than usual. Just that head, I felt kind of nauseous. Like actually the pain that I had was so bad that I was like, oh, I felt like sick from the pain. And I felt scrambled. And what happened later was I started feeling like aggressive and like hostile. Like somebody pissed me off, and I saw this hostility coming out. And when I Googled the withdrawal symptoms, I found that hostility was one of them. So yeah, like kind of nauseous and stomach stuff and the pain and the headache. But nothing like coming off of, hardcore drugs. I mean, the FDA, like, it's their right to warn people that it creates a dependency. Maybe for someone who's really abusing it could really create an addiction. But my experience was the withdrawal was nothing like opiates. I mean, it was not in the same league, you know what I mean? So, okay, what was it? Oh, here's the other thing that was a really big difference. It is possible to taper. That is a major difference. I mean, for me at least, I was able to taper. If you're, for example, addicted to heroin, okay, you cannot taper your heroin. Like, that's ridiculous. Oh, I think I'll just taper it, like, that's impossible. Yeah, with the kratom, I was able to like create like a regimen and just cut it right down. And yeah, I did not have that feeling of like, oh, I need some more kratom and I gotta dose myself, So I don't know if somebody really has addiction stuff going on where they're compulsive. I don't know if they could taper like that. But I was able to. Okay, so just to wrap it up, I think that kratom can be helpful, definitely, for some people at some time. I don't think it's a long-term solution for anything. I don't think it's good to just keep loading something into your body, even if it's an herb long-term, And I think when it's time to stop. If you start feeling like, man, it's not really working anymore, I feel like I'm toxifying myself, maybe it's time to stop. It's not a solution, like kratom's not a solution for everything. But the good news is, as far as I can tell, it is possible. I mean, this was 3 years. So there you have it. That's my story. And that's it. I don't know if I'll ever use it again. I mean, no promises. But I don't feel like I need it. And yeah, it's not like coming off of heroin or anything. And that's it. I hope this is useful to you. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.